Hi Kawan, welcome to EDCReady. Today we are finally doing a review of this guy. This is the Demko Knives AD20.5 with the grivory handles and the Aus10A blade steel. Now this guy is a clip point version, and I just want to finally do a review of this guy. This took so long because initially I lost the spring in the back here, so the knife just didn't lock up. So I went to AliExpress and I bought a packet of 5. One is in here right now. It's really cheap. I can't remember, but it's like, I don't know, $5, something like that. I'll link it down in the description below for you guys to check out the current price. However, months and months later, my cat was in my kitchen and he found this guy, the original spring. I don't know what happened. You can check it out in the disassembly video. I took it apart and then the spring just flew out. Must have gone under the door and went into the kitchen. But if I got my cat earlier, I would have found this guy a lot earlier. So without further ado, let's get into some measurements of this guy. I got my brand new calipers right here. Let's change it to inches. There we go. Zeroize it. Now let's talk about the blade thickness. Blade thickness here comes in at about, let's see now, 0.13 inches, which is about right. The height of the blade comes in at about just over 1.06 inches. It's a flat ground blade, so let's see how high is it to the grind. It comes in at, well, right around 0.75 inches. We have a blade length of about, let's see now, blade length here should come in at about, see if I got this measurement right. There we go. Blade length here is right around 3.25 inches. Let's check out the handle. The length of the handle here comes in at just under 4.5 inches. The height of the blade at its maximum height, we are looking at 1.45 inches, including the shark lock. We're coming in at, okay, it says here 1.43 inches. Let's see if I got that one right. Yeah, 1.43 inches on that end as well. And what else? Yeah, blade thickness, why not? Let's talk about it. It's just under 0.4 inches. So pretty good dimensions. Benchmade bug out light dimensions. It's not, however, as light as a Benchmade bug out. Take out my scale here. Let's switch it on. We are here in ounces. Let me move this guy to the side. Put this guy in. We're coming in at 3.6 ounces. So definitely on the heavier end. Just for comparison's sake, we have here a pair 3 lightweight, 2.4 ounces, and then this guy is coming in at 4.3 ounces. So definitely in that middle category between this guy, and this guy. So without further ado, let's get into the review. But before the review, I just want to show off the packaging that it comes with. It comes with this very nice zip case that you have here. You have a little patch here that says shark lock because this is running on the shark lock. You open it up and then you actually get quite a few usable pockets. You have this pocket, which is where the knife came from. It was in there like that. I just put a little silica gel in here. This is where something was, I can't remember what. But you also have the other pocket clip. So this pocket clip is non-symmetrical, so I can't just take this guy and flip it around to the other side like I can do with this guy. Flip it to the side, boom. This guy actually needs a whole different pocket clip because it is asymmetrical. So it's nice that it comes with all of that. I'm just going to shove all this back in here. This guy, I'm going to put it together with the original. No, let's put it back in here. And I am just going to package that all back into place while I get on with the review. So for the sake of this review, I'll be comparing it against a couple of things that I find similar in terms of function. Pair 3 lightweight and this guy. And I'm going to be doing a dedicated video comparing this guy to this guy, this guy to this guy, and comparing them all together. But everything here is in relevance to these two. Firstly, let's talk about the price. The price, this guy, I believe when it came out, was 150 US dollars, but the price has gone down. If you look at Blade HQ right now, this particular one in like the black scales is 120 USD, and I think I saw it on the Demko website for even cheaper. I think $90 on a certain variation. So do check those out. These guys are going through a pretty extreme Christmas sale right now. If you ask me, that's kind of where it should be comparative to like the rest of the market. It does have a lot of the same features as the Para 3 lightweight. I mean, it has these very well done high density polymer plastic handles. It has very similar blade steels, very similar size, very similar ergonomics. This guy is about 120, so is this guy. So I think that's about where it kind of lands. However, this is not made in the US. This guy is made in Taiwan, right there. Now, I'm not particularly like fickle when it comes to where a knife is made, as long as it's made well, and this guy is made well. I don't particularly care, but this, for those who care, most of you guys are from the US who are watching this channel. This is made in Golden, Colorado, USA Earth. So let's get into this video from tip to butt. Let's talk about this. This is the clip point version, and this is AUS10A. AUS10A is a very good budget steel, although this is not a budget price. If it was 100 or below 100 USD, this would be a nice budget knife. But this guy, AUS10A, in my experience, as you can see, I've used it quite a bit. Used it to open a lot of packaging, used it for a bit of gardening actually. Tried to cut up some root in my garden. You can expect it to function the same as a Nitro V blade and a CTS BD1N. It kind of falls into that that tougher end of the spectrum. It's going to be stainless, but it's not going to hold an edge crazy for a long amount of time. But that's okay. This guy strops up quite well, and you can, even if you want to, you can sharpen it yourself. So it's quite easy to sharpen. So all in all, good blade steel, but not at this price. If it was a bit cheaper, it's going to be great. The blade finishing itself is very nice. So you have jimping up here. You have a particularly strong tip. Okay, the blade design, you can see that this is definitely a thicker tip than the Vision FG, and definitely a thicker tip than even the Para 3 lightweight, which itself is not particularly thin bladed knife. So design of this blade is very nice. It is stone washed, so all of these sharp edges around the jimping and around this little hole right here is rounded off because of that stone washing. So it's a very comfortable blade to use in hand. You know, you don't get the sharp edges that you get in something that's satin finished like this guy. This corner here can get a little bit pokey, and the dragonfly which I had was extremely pokey and quite sharp around these edges. In fact, this guy is too. But because of that Stonewash finish, nicely rounded these edges right here. Very comfortable in hand. Now, the edge shape is actually very nice. You have quite a bit of flat, you have a good amount of belly, and you have already mentioned a nice strong poking tip. So this guy definitely does land on the more hard use end of the spectrum when it comes to folding pocket knives. It is not going to be a slicing monster like this guy, and it's nowhere near as slicey as something like this guy with the hollow ground blade and a much thinner blade profile. Couple that with the fact that it's not very tall grind. Okay, the grind here is actually much shallower than it is on this guy, who is also a flat grind. This is a flat grind, and then the Para 3 lightweight, completely flat ground all the way from the edge, which is really high, to the other edge. So these guys are gonna be much nicer slices than this guy. And that was kind of prevalent when I was doing some gardening work. Some things were actually kind of hard for it to go through. I was never worried about it fading on me, but yeah, this is not like the thinnest behind the edge, okay? Those two knives I showed you were thinner behind the edge, just for example. You can liken it something like another knife, which is the ZT, which also has a flat grind but not as high. Thinner blade stock, but it doesn't have as high of a grind as this guy. So you can expect it to kind of perform the same behind the edge as this in terms of thinness or thickness behind the edge. Another thing I want to mention is that the sharpening choil is done really well. It completely clears the plunge grind here. So you can sharpen or strop all the way to the end. So all in all, a pretty good blade steel for a budget price, which this is not. I've already mentioned that, but the blade design itself is very nice. Let's talk about the flicking action. As you can see, there are a few ways you can open this with. You have a thumb stud, which is good for flicking with your thumb and reverse flicking. You have this little fuller right here, which you can, in the right angle, flick with your thumb. Actually, it's great for reverse finger flicking because it just falls, your finger just falls into the hole that just in the perfect angle, and then it just flicks out. Okay, you can also pull back on the short lock, which I'll talk about a little bit, and then it'll flick out right there. So overall, very good design of this blade shape. Now, is there anything I don't like about it? Nothing really. I actually really like this blade shape. you do need to know that you are coming into this knife with a blade that is more designed for being tougher than it is being slicey. Compared to this guy, this guy's gonna definitely be a lot sliceier. Now I do like slightly more of a flat blade edge here, because I do tend to do a lot of pull cuts, but this is going to be great for any kind of rocking cuts that you need to do, any kind of carving cuts that you need to do. This guy is going to be great. So nothing really bad to say, it's just personal preference. I would have liked it a bit thinner and a bit slicier, but the trade-off is that this is going to be a little bit harder use. Now, moving back a little bit, let's talk about this pivot. This pivot is running on ball bearing pivots. You see that there's some nice I don't know what this is not etching. Some nice wording right here. It's nice and deep and nice and pronounced. We have here wampum place here, pencil, I don't know. The actual lettering is very nice. You have here Demko, or the Demko Knives. So that's all very nice texture. In fact, the texture of the handles all the way around are very, very well done. You have this nice grippy texture that is on the FRN here. And where the pocket clip lands, it actually lands on this thing, which is AD20.5. It's the same on the other side. But because like the rest of this knife is actually really heavily textured, having that little soft landing place for this pocket clip is actually very nice for it to go into your pocket. One thing that will throw a lot of people off, doesn't really bother me, but it will, is that this little divot that interacts with the stop pin right there. This little divot, it actually has a pretty big gap here. Do I have any other knives with that kind of gap? No, I don't really have any knives with that kind of gap. I guess the closest thing we have is this guy. There's this little gap here as well. But definitely the back of the blade with the scales here, things can get snagged in there, like little pieces of lint or whatever. So just be forewarned, it might actually affect the lockup. It is something that I've personally never experienced, but someone like Everyday City Commentary hates this kind of stuff. So I bring it down to, I tell people about it. Moving up a little bit, you do have a little place here for your finger to land, and you have this place here for you to choke up, just like that. You can choke back like that, or you can even do this kind of pinch grip. Yeah, which I really like, this kind of finger on the tip grip, which is actually very comfortable. All in all, ergonomics on this knife is pretty solid. Let's talk about the pivot here. Pivot here is, I can't remember if it's T8 or T10. Let's see now, do I have another T8? That's a T8. No, this is a T10, I think. Do watch the disassembly video to figure out more, because I can't remember, but this should be a T10. Very nice and deep pivot screw, no worries. As long as you're using good T10 screwdriver bits, you are going to have a good time taking this guy apart, because this guy is not really going to strip out if you are careful, because it's really, really deep. It is running on bearings, so it gets this very smooth, like flicking drop shut action. This is more of a guillotine than any knife I have, with the exception of this guy, Protect Malibu. This is more of a guillotine. Okay, but because of the thickness of this blade, it actually comes down a lot stronger. And I think that's just the magic of this shark lock. Once you pull back the shark lock, it's actually completely free swinging, just like with many other knives that I have, such as compression lock or the super lock from the Vision FG, and you get this great action. In fact, this is one of the best action knives I have, not in terms of the detent, but in terms of just the ability to swing it. And the great thing about the shark lock is that, look at that, okay, that means that the actual lock actually sucks in the blade at about there. That's about 3 inches away from the tip to the butt of the knife, and then it sucks it in like that. So you don't really need much effort at all. You don't really need much effort at all just to flick it down and it shuts down. Okay, so now let's talk about shark lock. Do watch my disassembly to figure out about how it works, but I can kind of show you right now. That little divot I mentioned just now, once the knife opens up, it's going to go around, and then it is going to engage with the stop pin. And then what happens here is that this little spring here that pushes this metal bar, this little metal bar here, it pushes it forward, and it has a flat surface. So as the touch point of the lock, which is going to be there, as this rotates around the pivot, okay, that shark lock will be pushed forward, and it will kind of press down on that little tang of the blade right there. It will push down on that. See, there's even a little ski jump right there. See, little angle there. So that will actually press down on that, rotate it, and then that will press it up against the stop pin right there. Okay, very similar in kind of mechanical design to this guy, the Para 3 lightweight. See here, there's a little place here, so the stop pin hits there, and then there is a little angle there. That is where the compression lock engages with the tang of the blade, pushes it down, it rotates the blade around, and it hits the stop pin. And then the pressure comes from the lock bar pressing down on the tang of the blade, rotating it into the stop pin, and then that is what keeps the knife locked. Now, a lot of people have talked about how this is the super lock, or the super lock is this, the shark lock, and then they steal from each other, but it's not. Functionally, they kind of work same. You have a little metal bar here with a spring in the back here, pushing the metal bar forward, that locks the knife. But the way the lock interfaces with the actual blade is completely different. For this one, you have that little flat surface that I mentioned, and then this flat surface that presses on it, it presses down because there's an angle on the back here. There's an angle on the back there, and then that presses it into the stop pin. Whereas with this guy, how it works is that there is a little leaf here. Okay, in fact, this is how it works. There's a little leaf here, and as this goes around, it goes into that little hole right there. And when it goes into that little hole, it kind of locks it in place, and it works together with the stop pin. So the lock bar is actually also working in conjunction with the stop pin together to kind of shove shove itself into that little hole right there. See? So instead of it just pressing down on the blade to rotate it around, it's actually pressing down. If you can see it there, don't know if you can see that. The lighting is not really helping here. Okay, it presses down into that hole to kind of like push it into that stop pin. So yeah, just a different way of interfacing. But I've waffled on for too long. It is 16, almost 17 minutes into the video. Sorry guys. Let's go back to the knife. So the short lock here has a lot of nice features. It's going to be a very strong lock. There's almost no blade play up and down, left and right at all. In fact, there's no blade play up and down, left and right that I can detect, or anything that's significant at all. It definitely has less blade play than the Para 3 lightweight side to side here, because it only has a washer on one side. This guy has bearing on both sides, so you don't really have that wiggle at all, or anything that I can detect, or anything significant. In terms of the D10, the D10 is actually really nice. The D10 is actually nicer than the Vision FG. I don't know why. I don't know if it's how the tang of the blade interacts with the back of the knife, but it is definitely one of those D10s that is more mushy than poppy. And here's what I mean. Let's see now. Do I have a poppy one? So almost everything that has a ball D10, which is this guy, and also my liner lock, that ball D10 creates a nice pop of a D10. So there's no movement, and then it just pops out. This guy has a squishy D10 because the D10 is basically based off of a spring. So very similar to, let's say, an Axis lock or on the Benchmade bug out and things of that nature. Even this guy, also very similar to this guy. There's nothing that creates a pop of opening it. Everything is just based off of that spring tension. But there's enough spring tension there that yeah, it creates a very nice satisfying flick to push it out. Now, keep in mind is that because it doesn't have anything that breaks away, you can actually just, hold on. There we go. You can actually just flick it out. It takes a lot of effort, as you can see there, but just keep that in mind. You know, if it's one of the situations where you kind of drop it, it might actually fling open once it hits the floors because it doesn't have anything to stop it from popping out. Okay, but other than that, some people have like ergonomic problems when it comes to the lock bar itself. I've never had that. If I hold it in a hammer grip, I don't get any hot spot from here. If I hold it in this, yeah, sure, I can get a hot spot, but when you're holding it this high up, most likely I'm doing that, and I barely feel this at all. Short lock itself is actually very well done. It's jimped on the back here, so you can use it as like a little ramp for extra traction for when you want to pierce something with that nice strong tip over there. You also have some jimping at the front right here, so you get nice traction here. However, the edges here are a bit on the sharper end, very similar to the bottom part or the top part of the Para 3 lightweight. If not, maybe like 5% less aggressive. So keep that in mind. Let's move back a little bit as well. Ergonomics. This guy has amazing ergonomics. This ergonomics, like, like kicks the butt out of this guy, and it is more comfortable than this guy. In fact, I think it is second only. Do I have it here? It is second only to the ergonomics of my native 5 salt, and this has been, like, in my opinion, the best ergonomics of any knife I've ever owned. And this guy is second only to this guy. So great job, Andrew Demko. Just great. Okay, you have this. It's not a neutral grip kind of ergonomic. So what I mean by that, so you have some knives that don't have any finger grooves like this guy. So what this means is that more people will find more positions of holding this guy comfortable, but nothing really that great. For this guy, the problem is, or the challenge is that unless it fits your fingers perfectly, okay, it is going to be uncomfortable. But if it does fit your finger, my god, this is amazing. This knife has amazing ergonomics. Now I wear size S gloves, or sometimes size M gloves, depending on how bloated I am. But this guy has such great ergonomics. In the hammer grip here, my my index finger goes in there, and then one finger goes in there, and then the rest goes in there, and then it is cradled by this back hump here. Very, very comfortable in hand. When I was using it in the garden, I felt no concern over fatigue or grip when I had this guy in my hand. You can even choke it up. Also surprisingly comfortable. Sometimes this can be a problem because there is no guard here, so you wanna be careful not to slip your finger forward and cut yourself. But when I was doing this, I was very comfortable cutting roots because just the grip of the FRN here and the positioning of these finger grooves gives you such strong, confident grip in this knife. And I think that's possibly the best part of this knife. I thought the best part of this knife was going to be the shark lock, and the shark lock is interesting. I really like the shark lock. However, what made me want to keep this knife is the sheer ergonomics of this guy. One thing I do gotta mention, the edges up here are all nice and rounded, so that's very well done. Good job, Andrew Demko. But the insides here are really sharp. Like, this is like possibly, is it sharper than the FRN here? Yeah, this is like slightly sharper than the Spyderco FRNs. And that's saying something, because I've always complained about how sharp these inner parts of the FRN are. This guy even more so. Okay, and this guy even more so. Let's take a look inside. Let's see if you can see it. As you can see, it has steel liners all the way from the front to the back of the knife. It has some milling to reduce weight. Don't know if you can see there. Check out the disassembly video to know more, but you do have some internal milling to reduce weight. As a result, this knife feels really solid. There is no like flex in this knife at all. Benchmade bug out. Sorry, my benchmade cough is still there. It doesn't have any flex at all. So actually, even though it is a FRN, it feels like there's a lot of grip, like G10 levels of grip, and then it feels really solid in hand. Couple that with the fact that this bar takes up half of the back space, and then it also has a back space here, not a back spacer, but it has this back thing from the middle of the knife all the way down to the bottom of this hub here. So as a result of that, it just feels solid. There's like no flex in this whatsoever. Now in the pocket, it's thin, it's nice and light, or it feels nice and thin. But this pocket clip is actually very bad. Okay, how I like to use the pocket clip is I actually like to put my fingers underneath the clip, lift it up a little bit, then put it into my knife. This just stops it from sagging a little bit. I can do that with this guy, no problem. Para 3 lightweight, I can do that, no problem. AD20.5 salt, I can do that, no problem. But with this guy, the beak here, which I do enjoy, because once you have a beak there, it actually reduces hot spots compared to, do I have a knife without a, sometimes when you have just a ski jump here, sometimes this spot here can actually like poke into your hand a little bit. But if it's flat here, it actually reduces that kind of hot spot you can get from here. But this guy is so low, sometimes just trying to force it into your jeans, it might actually catch on this portion here because it bends down a little bit. It's very hard to get underneath to kind of lift it up. I actually need to put my 2 fingers here, lift it up, and then push it into my knife. Push it into my pocket. So very bad pocket clip. If I were to do anything with this knife, it would be to change the pocket clip. The actual ergonomics of the pocket clip is very nice. You barely feel it because how not deep carry it is. Because when you hold it in a hammer grip, this just really falls into this little gap in your hand, just like that. So I mean, that's kind of a trade-off. Sometimes deep carry pocket clips are nice, but they do kind of dig into your hand a little bit, because where you want to grip, it's where you are going to feel it in your hand. Not so bad with this guy, not so bad with the wire clips, but I felt some really bad ones. The knives that I have are pretty good in that, but keep in mind, ergonomics are great. Putting it into the pocket is a bit of a trouble because of how low the slip is, but once it's in the pocket, it's nice and slim, and that's actually very nice to have. All right, so let's get into the conclusion. The conclusion is that this guy has a lot of great design. It is a little bit pricey, a little bit expensive for what it is. I was expecting it to be around the $95, $99 region, but when I saw the price at $150, I was like, whoa, that's really pricey. But now it is at $120 on Blade HQ, and I think cheaper, 90 on the actual Demko website. Do check it out to verify. I can't remember if I can't remember when's the last time I checked it, but it should still be that price. What this guy really wins at is design. Design in two factors. Design in the actual lock itself, which is a shark lock, which is a great lock. It feels solid, it feels firm, it is extremely fidgety. Okay, you can put it back to open it up, you can close it up, you can flick it. Extremely well designed knife. Now, Andrew Demko has created some amazing knives that Cold Steel has used a lot. You know, the Triad lock's extremely strong, and then he's also come up with other locks in the past for Cold Steel, such as the Scorpion lock, and I think this is his best lock design out there. And me, as a bit of a lock nerd, as you can see, a lot of my knives I buy for based on locking reasons. Okay, I love the mechanics of locks, I love the engineering of locks, so that's a great design element. The next thing is that actually this knife, surprisingly, is the most ergonomic knife I've had in a while. Ever since I bought this guy is still king, don't get me wrong, but this guy, it's a very, very comfortable number two. I mean, just the way it falls into my hand in this grip and in this grip is just fantastic. Yes, it's not going to be as slicey as some of these other knives, but the trade-off is that it's going to be a little bit more hard use, especially with full steel liners. Just great. Just right off the bat, it's great. Who is this going to be for? This is going to be for the guy who actually uses his knife and actually puts it to work. Okay, maybe not so much in terms of opening packaging, because for that you're going to need a nicer steel, a steel like Vanex, a harder steel like 20CV. Is this 20CV? Harder steel like 20CV, because they are going to hold an edge a little bit longer if you're going to be cutting cardboard all day. But if you have a strap with you, if you know how to sharpen, that's not such a big deal. This is going to be a knife for someone who is, you know, digging through the dirt, or cutting branches, or sorry, cutting small roots off of their hedges, or you know, you are trimming down your bush. Let me rephrase that. You're trimming down your friend's let me rephrase that, not your friend's bush. You're trimming down like little foliage around the house. If you are doing any kind of DIY project, you need to do some scraping, you can do it here, because you can do a bit of the scraping here, especially with this nice belly right there. You can really get around the scraping. Great knife for a campsite. You know, you need to do some whittling. You know, you need to take some wood and you need to do some carving. That is what this guy is used for. Something that is not so demure, not very mindful, but a knife that can do it, and a knife that you don't need to worry about. If you can get it a little bit cheaper, around $100, then this knife will be golden for you. Okay guys, that is it. Thank you so much, and as always, stay ready.